This is excellent, excellent. Everyone, go ahead and find the chat if you can. Hello, Jay. Welcome. Paul, welcome. Deborah, hello. Bree, hello. All right, looks like everyone's found it. All right. All right, everyone's going to take just a minute to get logged in. We are going to get started momentarily. Super excited about our webinar tonight. This is our members only webinar, and I am excited to talk about our Scholarship House 50/50 program. Super pumped. Who's excited? Anyone? Anyone? All right. All right. Barbara's on here with us. Hello, Barbara. Silvana. Hello. Hello, hello. It looks like, Julie, yes, Julie's excited. Awesome, awesome. Welcome. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll give everyone just another second to get logged in. This is purposefully going to be a small group. This is just our members. And of course, this will be recorded and put into our school group community. But this is going to be for you as members. We did a webinar just recently on taxes. Hopefully, that was very helpful to learn all the ins and outs of the taxes related to real estate and short-term rentals. That was a lot of fun. That was a good webinar. We've had a private reserve webinar. That was a lot of fun where we dove into some of the details of more strategic ways of buying real estate. And today, this is going to be the heart of it all. This is going to be the webinar where we dive into just the details of real estate investing, some of the risk and how to mitigate the risk, how we can help you minimize the risk with our new 50/50 program, and just better ways to make it easier for you so that you can just enjoy the real estate and use it to pay for your kids' college and retirement. So super excited. Barbara, will there be a replay? Yes, there will be a replay saved. So we will save this into the school group. So in the school group is where we're posting all of these kind of members only webinars. So we'll put this recording there. And you're probably going to want to watch this a few times because we've got some good stuff that we're going to go over. So I'm super excited about that. Use the comments and the chat or the Q&A feature. We'll make sure we go over all the Q&A at the end. That is the beauty of doing these live, is because I love doing Q&A. If you've ever been on one of our members only webinars, sometimes we'll go longer in the Q&A than we do on the content itself. So I love questions. Please bring your questions and we'll go over those in a lot of detail, make sure we answer all of those. So without further ado, it's a couple minutes after the hour. We'll go ahead and get started because, again, we're going to be able to put this recording in our group and you'll be able to watch this again. I just want to make sure we get everything all teed up here. Let me grab my PowerPoint. There it is. Okay, so you should be seeing my PowerPoint. You should hopefully hear me okay still. All right. Let's do it. Let me take one more drink and we'll dive in. All right, so scholarship houses and why you should use a scholarship house instead of a 529 account or any other way of paying for college. That is what we're going to talk about today. And specifically, we're going to get into our new 50/50 partnership program where we guarantee a return on your investment. You get all the tax benefits and we do all the work. It's like the best thing ever. So this is super exciting. I can't wait to go over all the details of this and we will go over that at the end. But real quick, I want to just recap because I know if you are a current client, then obviously you were excited about the idea of using a scholarship house to pay for college and retirement. But just as a quick recap, there are three reasons why you want to consider using a scholarship house to pay for college. Number one, cash flow. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to dive into the details of real estate investing, and we're going to talk about the cash flow that can come from owning one of these properties that will pay for your college and your retirement. Number two, tax scholarships. We're going to get into this a little bit as well, and some of the benefits of the tax savings that comes from buying one of these scholarship houses or one of these real estate properties. And then, yes, some of you could even qualify for some financial aid by investing in this real estate and reducing your income. So again, if you take your money, whether it's your 529 accounts, your savings, your cash flow, or a brokerage account, or you drain your retirement, or you take out loans and make loan payments, whatever the case may be, if you take all of that money and pay for college with that money, that would be an expense and that money would be gone. Okay. So if you take your money and pay for college, your kids will be happy, parents will be sad because your money will be gone. If we take that same amount of money and put it towards a scholarship house or an investment property, it could generate cash flow, give you tax benefits, and might even qualify for some financial aid. It's a way better deal. It makes the kids happy because they get the education of their dreams, and it makes the parents happy because now they have an asset. Instead of it being an expense, we now have an asset. That asset will generate cash flow. Sometimes right away, we could take this cash flow and we could take this and pay this towards college. Or we could borrow the money for college and we could just use this cash flow to pay back all these college loan payments. Either way, it's the scholarship house that's generating the cash flow that pays for college or college loans. It doesn't matter. One way or the other, that college cost will be paid for by the asset. But here's the best part. There's nothing better than a win-win. Nothing better than being able to have your cake and eat it too. Because once college is paid for, all of this cash flow doesn't stop. That cash flow could continue the rest of your life, the rest of your kids' lives, the rest of your kids' lives. That cash flow could be coming in for generations to come. But just in 35 years, we could be talking about an additional $1 million of what we like to call free retirement scholarship money. Everybody wants scholarship money, right? Well, that's a lot of free money. That's $1 million in free money. Now, it sounds so easy, doesn't it? It just sounds so easy. But today I want to get into the details of real estate investing, and I want to talk a little bit about the real estate risk and myths about real estate risk. And I also want to introduce you to our 50/50 partnership program that allows you to remove some of the risk and put that on us, as well as having us do a lot of the work for you. So I'm really excited about that because we want to make real estate easy. However, I do want everyone to understand real estate investing. You know, it's kind of interesting. The industry, the financial industry, I mean, I remember I got licensed over 20 years ago and I was a fiduciary. I would meet with families and I would talk to them about financial planning. I was a fee-based planner. I could do assets under management. I could do everything a fiduciary could do. However, ironically, I was trained on how to use the stock market, mutual funds, insurance products, all of the traditional ways to save for retirement. I was not trained as a licensed fiduciary on real estate investing. And if you think about your Edward Jones, your Merrill Lynch, your Goldman Sachs, like a lot of these big financial institutions, or Raymond James, some of these, brokerage firms, if you go and meet with 10 financial advisors, they're probably not going to talk to you very much about real estate, if any. A lot of them will never even mention real estate. And yet, we know that real estate can be a very powerful vehicle, but yet nobody talks about how to use real estate as an investment. Your realtors or your real estate agents, they are simply selling houses. They're selling houses for the benefits of the house. They don't necessarily focus on the investment benefits of the house. It's more about selling you on a house. So there's really nobody that's teaching the general public about real estate as an investment to pay for college and to pay for retirement. And that is what I want to focus on today. And then we'll talk about how we can do it for you and make it so easy that it won't even take a lot of your time to be able to get all of the benefits of investing in real estate. Okay. All right. So let's start with the beginning. Let's start at the very beginning. First things first, real estate is an asset. There's a lot of different assets. There's stocks. If you go and buy a stock or a share in Tesla, that means that you own a part of Tesla, a very small part of Tesla, but you own a part of Tesla. If you go and buy a bond, okay, or invest in a bond, then that means that you are investing in basically a loan for companies, the companies to be able to borrow money. Same concept. You could go buy yourself a gold brick, right? A gold bar. You could go buy yourself a gold bar, and that would be an asset. You could get a silver bar. You could get Bitcoin. You could get cryptocurrency. These are all assets. Land is an asset. You can invest in a business, a startup business if you wanted to. There's a lot of ways to invest your money. And ultimately, when you invest in real estate, you are buying an asset, plain and simple. Okay. You are buying an asset. All of these assets have one thing in common. They all go up in value. Every one of these assets has gone up in value over the years. Okay. The cost of houses today, a lot more than when I bought my first house. Okay. Bitcoin today is a lot more than when it came out. Tesla, to buy into Tesla is more than when it first started. All of these assets, even gold has had a major rally over the last year, and even gold has gone up significantly. Everything has gone up significantly over the years. Okay, these are just assets. Just to give you some ideas, stocks, for example, if we're using like an S&P and we get the dividends, we might average around 14% in the last 10 years. However, we do know that sometimes it's been better than others. Normally, you're looking at around a 10% return historically, but a lot of it depends on timing. Back in the 80s and the 90s were the glory days of the stock market. You got to think about what was happening in the 80s and the 90s. Prior to the 80s, if you wanted to invest in the stock market, you had to invest in an individual stock like GE or, Procter and Gamble or Coca-Cola or something like that. They didn't come out with mutual funds that allowed you to invest $100 a month or something small until the 80s. Plus, during the 80s and the 90s, they started to get rid of pensions and replacing those pensions with 401ks. We also had the baby boomers reaching their peak earning years during the 80s and the 90s. There were a lot of reasons why the stock market did really well during that particular 20 years. Over those 20 years, the market did about 14% return. That's amazing. That's what I call the glory days of the stock market. However, the same stock market from 2000 to 2009 is 10 years of what we call the lost decade. During those particular 10 years, the stock market actually lost money. If you started with $1, it would have been worth 76 cents 10 years later. So even the stock market that has historically done well has times where it doesn't do well. In this particular time, that was 10 years where it didn't do very well. Now, what about bonds? Bonds have always been kind of the traditional steady Eddie. It's like the tortoise and the hare, right? The bonds have always been the slow and steady rate of return. Now, during the lost decade, if we could have received what would be considered a limited return, we could have gotten a 5% return on our money on average, let's say, and we would have done better than the stock market during that particular time frame. So again, timing is such a big part of investing. Just recently, from 2025 to 2026, gold went up by 70% in a single year, creating kind of an average return of almost 12%. But again, a lot of that was because of the last year. So a lot of this fluctuates from time to time. Cryptocurrency, phenomenal returns from the beginning, but now they're talking about how it might just average out to being similar to the stock market. It just kind of depends. It's all based on timing. We supposedly, some experts say that the glory days of cryptocurrency is kind of like the 80s and the 90s of the stock market. We've already seen the big gains, and now it's going to level out a little bit. Who knows? Who actually knows? But what I want to talk about is real estate. In the past 10 years, we've had a great little run in the real estate market. The base return, the base return has been around 7%. So if I bought a house 10 years ago, it would be worth about 7% annually on average more. So it's grown in value every year, an average of 7%. It's very similar to the stock market. Real estate can increase in value just like the stock market, just like gold and silver, and just like a lot of these other assets. Okay. However, with real estate, there is something unique. There's something unique about real estate called the leverage factor. Because we could put 20% down on $1 million house, we're buying $1 million house with only $200,000. That $1 million house, if it goes up by 5% a year, could be worth a lot more over a 10-year time frame. We get the benefits of the appreciation and the increase on $1 million, even though we only put in a $200,000 investment. The other thing that's unique about real estate is what we call the rental yield. What that means is that we can receive rent on the real estate investment, giving us a closer to stock market return. So is it possible for real estate to increase at the same rate as the stock market? Of course, anything is possible, but it all is based on timing. You never really know. But let's talk about this a little bit more in detail. Let's say that I buy $1 million house. And if that $1 million house increases at 5% a year over 10 years, then it's going to be worth $1.6 million in 10 years. Now, how much did we pay for the house? Well, let's say that we put 10% down. If we put 10% down, that means that I only had to come up with $100,000 to get that $628,000 of gain. Over a 10-year window, that's a 20% annual return. That is the power of leverage. Something that you can't do with all assets. One of the unique benefits of real estate is leverage. Now, let's say that I put 25% down because I'm going to buy a vacation rental and I need a down payment. I need furnishings and some maybe put a pickleball court in or a barrel sauna or some of these amenities. Maybe I need a design and a theme and I really need to invest a little bit more. I could put 25% down on $1 million house. And if that house increases in value at 5% a year, I would have $628,000 of equity. That's the equivalent of almost a 10% annual return on my money. without any rent. We haven't talked about rent yet. This is just talking about the increase on the house at a 5% inflation rate. Okay? You're not losing money if you don't collect rent. You could buy a house and not collect any rent, and you're not losing money. There's nothing more frustrating than when I see an ad or a video on Instagram or TikTok where it says, hey, don't invest in this type of real estate because you're going to lose money. Just because you're not just because you're not getting a positive cash flow does not mean you're losing money. Now, here's the benefit though. You now own a house. Okay? You now own a house. I bought this cabin last year. Okay? This is a scholarship house. But guess what? This cabin is way more exciting than owning a 529 account, than owning a 401k, than owning a brokerage account. It's still an asset. It's still an investment. It's still increasing in value. But we get to go and enjoy it as a family. We get to go boating out on the lake. We get to go snowmobiling and skiing in the mountains. But it's still an asset. Let's talk about a 401k. Who just mentioned a 401k? Who just mentioned? Somebody just mentioned a 401k in here. I just saw it. I swear. And then it was gone. Okay. Oh, James, if your company matches, you are foregoing that. No, let's talk about that, James. Let's talk about a 401k. All right. How do we speed up? How do we speed up the investment to grow a little bit faster? One option is a 401k. Let's talk about a 401k for a minute. Let's say, why do I have red? Why do I have some red in here? If I'm talking about a 401k, why do I have red? It's because I have a partner. I have a partner on this investment. Who's my partner that I have on this investment over here on my 401k? Who's my partner in my 401k? Yes, Ivy, the IRS, Julie, the government, Jack, the IRS, government, Uncle Sam. All right, that's my partner. Okay, I still owe those taxes. I haven't paid those taxes yet. Okay, because my money in a 401k goes in pre-taxed. Now, we could get into Roth 401ks. I mean, we could get into that another day. But here's the deal. Check this out. If I'm putting $3,000 a month out of my own pocket towards my wife's and my account, let's say I'm putting $3,000 between our two retirement accounts. And let's say that we're getting $1,000 a month in a match. Okay? Guess what that does? That increases my account. I'm getting some free money. Okay. So if I'm paying $3,000 a month into my 401k and I'm getting $1,000 a month, then that means I've got $4,000 going towards my 401k. It's going to grow faster. It's going to grow faster. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Let me ask you this though. Am I losing money? Am I losing money in this example over here on the left? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I have a point. I'm trying to make a point. Am I losing any money? What if I'm not getting all $3,000? What if I'm not getting a dollar for dollar match? Instead of getting $3,000 from my company, what if I'm only getting $1,000 from my company? Am I losing money? No, I'm not losing any money, am I? Even though I'm not getting a dollar for dollar match, I'm not losing money, am I? So why in the world, if I collected some rent, okay? If I collected some rent on my property to increase my return, just like a 401k, okay? Why does everyone think that if I'm putting $3,000 towards this house every month and I collect $1,000 a month in rent, why does everyone think we're losing money? What's the difference between putting $3,000 a month towards my 401k and only getting $1,000 a month in a match? Nobody seems to have a problem with that. Nobody goes on TikTok and makes a video that says, if you're not getting a dollar for dollar match, you're losing money in your 401k. Or if your company is not matching more than your money, if you're putting in $3,000 a month, your company should be putting in $4,000 a month, or you're going to be losing money. You don't ever hear that, do you? So why is it that when we get an extra $1,000 a month to help pay down my mortgage and increase my value, right? How is that possibly losing money? How is that possibly losing money? Now, I'm not saying that that's the goal. I'm not trying to say that that's the goal. Our goal is not to spend $3,000 a month and only collect $1,000 a month in rent. That's not the goal, but we're not losing money. The risk is affordability. That's the risk. You might not be able to afford $2,000 a month. So if it's $3,000 a month to own the house and you're only collecting $1,000 a month in rent, you've got to come up with $2,000 a month out of your pocket. But you're not losing money. You just might not be able to afford it. And that's a different story. That's a completely different story. Okay? Just like if you don't get a dollar for dollar match on your 401k, you're not losing money. If you don't get a dollar for dollar match on your real estate, you're not losing money. Now, what's the goal? The goal is to pay, let's say, $3,000 a month, let's say, and maybe we get $4,000 a month in rent. That's great. That's awesome. How many of those should we do? Okay. If we're only paying $3,000 to own the house and we're collecting $4,000 a month in rent, how many should we get? A lot. As many as you can. Right? All the Julie says all the houses. That's right. All right. Okay. All right. Now, questions. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is that when you pay money to own a piece of property, you are paying money, okay, to own that property, but that property will still increase in value. I bought a property in Florida, and my primary goal is to make money and have that be a cash flowing positive property. Like my goal for the house in Florida was to make money. My goal for the house, my cabin, okay, my goal for this cabin was to just have it be an investment without necessarily worrying about the cash flow. We're not even worried about renting it out. We use it a lot as a family. But even if I'm paying more money to own the house than I'm collecting in rent, this house is still increasing in value every year. I do not have to collect more rent than my expenses to own the house for it to be a good investment. It's still a good investment. If I'm putting $5,000 a month into this house to own the house, that is no different than putting $5,000 a month into the stock market or into some bonds or into whatever other asset that I want to put my money into. They're all growing in value. First of all, there's affordability. Obviously, affordability is a concern. Everybody needs to be able to afford to buy that house. That is the question, and that is the risk. One way to do that is diversification. That's another way to minimize risk, is with diversification. But let's talk about affordability first. If you're going to invest in real estate and you're worried about being able to afford the mortgage payment, if you don't collect enough rent, then you need to really work on building up your savings. Now, we have an entire webinar that we talk about the private reserve strategy and a strategic way of using savings and safe money as an emergency fund, or what we refer to as a private reserve account. But if you are worried about affordability, okay, if you're worried about affordability, you need to have a cushion. You need to have a cushion. You need to have savings. That's number one. Number two, diversification is another way to diversify risk. I can have some of my money in stocks, some of my money in bonds. I could even buy some gold. I could have some money in real estate. And I could even throw a little money in Bitcoin if I wanted to. That's what we would call diversification. I can also diversify inside each asset class. I could put some of my money towards Tesla, some of my money towards Amazon, or I could buy a mutual fund and I could be invested in hundreds of companies. Okay? I could buy the S&P and I could be invested in all those top 500 S&P companies, right? I can also buy more than one property. I can put my money in multiple properties. That creates diversification. I could also invest in a REIT. A REIT is like a mutual fund with real estate. Okay, so it's like investing in lots of real estate. But I'm going to show you how you can also create some diversification, even if you can only afford to buy one house. But let's also just talk briefly about worst case scenario. I had a client who sold an oil company for $100 million, and he put $100 million into the stock market. That was in 2007. He lost half of the money. He then took the money out of the stock market because he was upset, and he put it into another oil company because he was comfortable with the oil industry. So he put all of his money into another oil company. Unfortunately, that oil company could not get the oil out of the country for some political reasons, and the whole company went down. Okay, just like Blockbuster. Okay, you could own a stock, and worst case scenario, the stock goes to zero and you lose all your money. If I buy a house and worst case scenario, I don't get insurance on it for some crazy reason and it burns to the ground, I still own the land. I at least own the land. So it's kind of hard to go to zero with real estate. So I would argue that your worst case scenario in real estate is a lot less risky than stocks. But let's talk about some guarantees. I want to talk about some guarantees in real estate. The first guarantee in real estate are the tax scholarships or real estate tax savings. So if you've never invested in real estate before, you might be concerned about investing in real estate because there's a lot of unknowns, which is what we're talking about tonight. However, although there are some unknowns and there are some risk and there's some uncertainty when investing in real estate, with the current tax code, if you follow the rules, and I'm not giving you tax advice, I'm not your CPA, but if you follow the rules, you could qualify for some tax benefits. Guaranteed. It's in the current tax law. Okay. And it's all based on depreciation. If you've watched my webinar or any of my videos, I've talked about this before. What we love about real estate is that the government allows us to depreciate the real estate over time on our taxes. But we also know that historically, like we looked at in the beginning, that the real estate goes up in value. Okay, the real estate goes up in value. If you get a cost segregation study, the cost segregation study looks at all of the items in the house that can be depreciated over a shorter period of time. Okay. For example, this is my cabin, and they take out the land because they don't let you depreciate the land. And that means I get to depreciate $1.1 million. I get to depreciate over $1 million off of my income. But because of bonus depreciation, I'm able to depreciate about 30% roughly of the house because of the furniture, the flooring, the appliances, and all of the items that the cost segregation study says that I can depreciate allows me to depreciate in 1 year. And then I get all of the rest of the depreciation over 39 years. So I still get all of the depreciation, but I get most of it in year one, or a big chunk of it in year one, thanks to the big beautiful bill, where we got 100% bonus depreciation. So if you take a cost segregation study and bonus depreciation, that equals huge tax savings. On $1 million house, okay, it's around 25 to 35% that you can reduce in year one. That's about $300,000 off of your income. And if you rent out the house for an average of 7 days or less, you can reduce this from your W-2 or 1099 active income. Basically, we're talking about Airbnbs for an average of 7 days or less, right? So the scholarship house that we're buying, okay, if we buy a scholarship house for $1 million, that could potentially reduce our income by $300,000. And if you're in a 37% tax bracket, that's over $100,000 in tax savings. Now, I want to stop and talk about this for just a minute, because where can you invest your money, even at $3,000 a month? Where can you invest your money and get an instant return on that investment to the tune of, let's say, $100,000? If I just invested in the stock market, is the stock market going to give me $100,000 in tax savings? No. If I invested in Bitcoin, am I going to get $100,000 in tax savings? No. So yes, there's a rate of return. We've talked about rate of return. We've talked about cash flow and collecting money and rent and all that kind of stuff. But you can guarantee that if you follow the rules, you can guarantee to get a huge return on your investment, separate from what we've been talking about, separate from having the house appreciate in value. We can get a huge tax benefit guaranteed. That's what makes real estate such a unique investment. Okay. Now, the other guarantees is that we are trying to make this very easy for you by offering a 50-50 partnership where we guarantee a return on your investment. You get all the tax benefits and we do all the work. Now, you still have to qualify for the tax write-offs by using, doing your, material participation, they call it. Okay. But you get the benefits. We do the work and we partner. Our team is going to find the house in the right market, right? We're going to do all the data analysis, crunch the numbers, decide if it's a good investment, which is about 1 or 2 out of 100. Okay. Our team is going to design the house. Our team is going to promote and market the house. Our team is going to manage the house. Our team is going to optimize the house for maximum revenue. And you get to enjoy the house and use it to pay for college and retirement. And you get all the tax benefits. Okay, so let's break down our scholarship house partnership and then let's jump into some Q&A. All right, first of all, locating and purchasing the house. We are going to find the property that will give us maximum revenue. I was trying to explain that even if you don't make any money on the house, it is still a good investment. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to make money. So we're going to find a house with maximum revenue. We're going to look at top revenue markets, maximum occupancy rates, maximum average nightly rates, maximum gross revenue potential. We're going to create the LLC. We're going to file the tax returns and we're going to issue you a K1. The LLC owns the house. We each own 50% of the LLC. Let me say that one more time. The LLC owns the house, and we each own 50% of the LLC. Okay, we're going to have a bank account tied to the LLC that pays all the expenses and that gets all of the revenue. And both of us will have full access to the account for full transparency. Okay, we are going to get all the permits and licensing to set it up as an Airbnb, and you're going to pay for it. You're going to put down the earnest money, the down payment, the closing costs, the inspection and permits, the insurance, and 6 months of expenses to sit in an escrow account while we're getting it designed and set up and running and maximum revenue coming in. Okay. Then we arrange the cost segregation study and you get all the tax benefits. Our team designs the property to provide a unique experience for a target audience to become a top 1% property. We select one of our top vacation rental designers. We work with the designer on a budget. We manage the design process. We get all the photos and measurements to the designer. We answer any questions they have. Okay. And you just fund it. Okay. You're the financial partner. We are the working partner. We manage the property to become a top 1% property. We manage the property for maximum revenue and to provide a unique experience for the guest. We communicate with the guests to create that 5-star experience. We manage reviews to create a guest favorite property. And we manage the cleaners, the yard maintenance, pool, hot tub, whatever. Our team manages the revenue. We use pricing strategies to increase the average nightly rates. And we use technology to increase occupancy rate. And the revenue from the property pays the management costs. Okay. And we split the profit. We do all the marketing. We get it listed on Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. We manage the listing. We update the listing. We update the photos, the headline, and the description. We communicate and update it with reviews. We respond to the reviews. We design and build a web page for the house. We run online ads to increase the bookings. We manage the guest database. We send out emails, newsletters, and cultivate that guest relationship for repeat business. So we get a lot of direct bookings and don't have to pay Airbnb fees. Okay, we create a budget based on an estimated annual revenue, however much we think the house is going to bring in the year. We keep some of the profit during the peak season to kind of cover the off-season months. And then we basically split the profit 50-50. Paid out quarterly. Okay. We cover the mortgage and monthly expenses if there isn't enough money in the account. After you've funded the initial investment, we cover the difference. And here's the best part. We guarantee at least a 4% annual return on your initial investment starting in the second year and paid out quarterly. That means the money you paid on the down payment, the money you paid on the design and the setup, the money you paid on any utilities, mortgage payments, whatever your initial investment was, we guarantee a 4% return. And then you get to benefit from us buying multiple properties. So you get to benefit from our diversification because we are going to own hundreds of 50%. Okay, we're going to own 50% of hundreds of different properties. And so we can basically guarantee that 4% return because of our diversified portfolio. But you at least know that you're going to get some cash flow coming in. Now, we're going to provide all the financial reporting and bookkeeping for 100% transparency. You will have full access to the business bank account to see all the transactions. We use the equity for any major expenses. Let's say it needs a new roof one day. We use the equity in the property to cover those major expenses. And any expenses that are not covered by the equity are split 50-50. If it needs a new roof, there's not enough equity or whatever, then we both chip in 50-50. You can use it just like I'm using my cabin. You can use your property that you invest in with us. We own the house 50-50, so you can use it for a 50% discount. Or if it's not booked out in the next couple of weeks, you can go just book it anytime and pay the cleaning fees. If you want out, you can get out. Of course, the goal is long-term cash flow and appreciation, but you can sell your 50% ownership in the LLC at any time. And then we are committing to at least 5 years. And then if we both agree, now our goal is long-term, of course. Okay. But if we both agree that we want to sell the property, we could always, sell the property, do a 1031 exchange and buy another property. And then we would split the equity 50-50 after you get all your money back. You get all of your money back first, and then we would get our money back second if we had put in some money out of our pocket to guarantee it. And then we split whatever's left 50-50. So you get the upside of the equity as well. And then we both create generational wealth for our families. It's a win-win. Okay? All right. If you want to go into more details and you want to read the contract, for those of you who like all the fine print, you can go to scholarshiphouse.com/5050 if you want some more information on that. And you can also send an email to support@collegefunding-secrets.com if you are interested in getting into one of these 50-50 properties. If you don't know who your college funding specialist is. If you know who your college funding specialist is, then reach out to your college funding specialist and say, I'm interested in a 50-50 property. If you do not know who your college funding specialist is, send an email to support@collegefunding-secrets.com. Now, before we get into some Q&A, I want to go through a case study with you. I want to go through a specific example, and I want to show you a worst case scenario. Okay, let's say that we are talking about this house that is $1 million. Zoom in here for you. Okay, let's say that we put 10% down, and let's say there's some closing costs, there's some design setup, and let's say there's 6 months worth of expenses. Let's say that worst case scenario, you're out of pocket $320,000. A lot of these properties are going to be a lot less than that. A lot of these properties are going to be less than 10% down. Okay. Some of them are fully furnished, so we don't need to put in as much in furnishings. But let's just say you're coming up with $320,000 out of your pocket. Okay. And let's say that over 10 years, we're going to collect some rent, and there's going to be some upside appreciation. Okay. And this is going to be your return on your investment. Let's break that down. Let's first talk about the tax savings, the guaranteed tax savings. On $1 million property, you would be able to reduce your income by about $300,000. If you are in a 37% tax bracket, that is over $100,000 in tax savings. If you are maybe in a 24% effective tax bracket, that's about $72,000 in tax savings, and you get all of that tax savings. That basically is a return. That's a return on your investment. That's a return on that $320,000 investment. Now you are guaranteed to make at least $1,000 a month. That's 4%. But the goal is to make a lot more than that. And these are also very conservative numbers, but that would be your 50%. That would be your 50% of the revenue. And then again, if the $1 million house increases to 1.6 million at 5% over 10 years, there would be $600,000 of equity in there. Okay. And then you would get your initial investment back, plus you would get all that cash flow and the tax savings. So you turned a $320,000 investment into $685,000 over 10 years. And of course, that cash flow could go towards paying for college or college loans. Okay, hold on. I know we've got a million questions. So let's jump up on here a little bit. Let's go back into the questions. Okay, Shay says, what are the management fees? That's actually one of the benefits of what we're doing. With economies of scale, our goal is to get those management fees from like a 20 to 30% down to like a 10%. So by us doing all the management, we're going to be able to benefit from economies of scale. And it'll probably start out in about the 20% range and get down to about 10% with scale. Okay. Marjorie says, repeat what is our piece of the investment. So Marjorie, it's a 50-50 partnership. You get 50% of the revenue, you get 50% of the upside, and you get all the tax benefits because you're the financial partner. We are the working partner. Okay. Sujan says a lot to unpack here. It looks like we will take much of the risk up front. Look, here's the deal. If you buy into this house, you can always sell anytime you want. And if we put money in, if we put $150,000 into this house, it is going to be worth a lot more. That allows us to get that money back, worst case scenario. But there's really no risk on your part because we're guaranteeing you at least a 4% return on your investment, plus you get all the tax benefits. So give me some more details there on what you consider to be the risk, because our goal is to take away the risk. So if you think there's risk, we are guaranteeing a 4% return on your investment. So what's the risk? Paul says, who pays the insurance? The revenue, the money coming in from the property pays the insurance and all the expenses. Roy says, where can we see the different 50-50 offerings? Okay, great question. Meet with your college funding specialist. Book a time with your college funding specialist, and we can find out what your goals are, and we can help you find a property that fits your goals. Okay? And then we have our scholarshiphouses.com website that will launch next week. Scholarshiphouses.com. Okay, our scholarshiphouses.com website is going to allow you to see all of these properties, and this will be launching next week. So in here, you're going to be able to see all of these properties and all of the details. We're getting all of them loaded right now. So we've already got lots of properties in here. We're going through and we're currently doing all of the underwriting on all of these properties. We're going to provide all of the financials for all of these properties. So we're loading this up as we speak. This is going to be available next week. But we already have properties available. So we don't have, hundreds of properties available. So first come, first serve. But we do already have properties available that you could get into right away. We've been closing on about one house a week lately. So we're getting into a lot of properties right now. Okay. Oops. Total return is 685,000, but benefit is only 685,000. No. No, the $685,000 is again, you're turning your $320,000 into $685,000 because you get your initial investment back. George says, what state LLC will you use? We typically use we've been just putting all the LLCs in Utah currently because that's where my CPA is setting them all up currently. James, reach out to us and we'll go through that your question one-on-one because most people aren't familiar with that. So we'll go over that one-on-one with you. Roy, what is the typical smallest investment we can make? Good question, Roy. You're probably looking at about $150,000 is going to probably be on the low end to do one of the 50-50 deals. Shia, is there a different ownership structure than 50-50? No, I mean, you can either own it yourself. So again, our Scholarship Houses website is going to allow you to just buy these properties yourself, and you can own these properties yourself. You do not have to do it with us. You can go and buy a property yourself. We are just offering to basically do the work for you in a 50-50 partnership. That's the only option right now. Sujan, 4% guaranteed return is after the second year. Yes, because usually there's kind of that first year that we're kind of ramping everything up. Yep. Alice says, do we get this type of spreadsheet for every property? Yes. Alice, whatever property you invest in, you will get this spreadsheet on that particular property with all of the details of that property. This is just an example. What happens after 10 years? I'm just showing you an example of 10 years. The goal is to keep these properties long term. Hopefully, we're paying your grandkids revenue from these properties. There's no plan to sell the house after 10 years. There's no plan to ever sell the house. But you can get out anytime you want, or if we both agree that we want to sell the house, we can sell the house. Okay. Roy says we still need to invest the 500 hours, right? No, there are ways to just do the 100 hours. There are ways to just do the 100 hours, and we can go over that in detail with you. So you would need to put in your 100 hours. Basically, you need to go and visit the property, and you need to be involved to be able to get the tax benefits of 100 hours, basically. Let's see. Is a new LLC required? Yeah, we set up a new LLC with every property. And then if you already have an LLC, your LLC can own the 50% of the new LLC that we set up for the property. Every property will be owned by a new LLC. But your LLC could own the 50% of the LLC. You don't have to own it personally. You can definitely talk to your estate attorney about trusts and you putting it in a trust. We can help with that. How did you determine that what you bring to the table is worth 50%? And great question. Because we're doing all the work. It's like any business partnership. You're the financial partner, we're the working partner. And with economies of scale, we're getting discounts on management costs. We're getting discounts on the design. We get discounts on the mattresses, the furniture, all of the design and everything. We get discounts on everything because of the economies of scale concept. But honestly, we also have our people on payroll and everybody doing a lot of the work as well. So honestly, it's totally up to you. If you want to own 100% of the house, we can help you find a house. We've got lots of houses. These houses will all be posted over the next week. So you are more than welcome to do it yourself. This is just for those of you who don't want to spend the time on it. Okay. What is the difference between CAGR and okay, so an internal rate of return and an internal rate of return factors in timing. So when you invest $320,000 and the next year you get $70,000 in tax savings, that is all factored into what we would call an internal rate of return. This is called a this is called a compounded annual growth rate. CAGR stands for compounded annual growth rate. That is the estimated return in comparison to if you left the money in the brokerage account. Let's say that you have money in a brokerage account. Okay. If you have money in a brokerage account, this would be a similar return to the money if you just left it in a brokerage account. James, you're hilarious. Jay says it definitely seems worth 50% because our initial investment is recouped first before the equity split. That is correct. Plus, we get the full tax benefit. Jay, amen. Jay, I agree. Okay, that's kind of the trade-off. You guys put up the money, you get the tax benefits. So, there's some trade-off there. Plus, you get your initial investment back. So when we sell the house in the future, you get your initial investment back. It's a win-win. All right. So it is all short-term rental. Yes, these are all short-term rentals. Yep. George says, how do you determine the right market? George, we determine the right market through what we call underwriting. What we do is we use tools. We use tools to go in and analyze markets. Tools like AirDNA, for example. And we go into these markets and we look at revenue potential in these markets and we look to see if it's worth investing in that market. So it's all based on lots of data. And we would go over the data with you before you ever purchased one of these houses. We would go over all of the data on the specific house that you want to invest in. Alice, whose name will be on the mortgage? That is a great question. Most of these properties are going to be creative financing or seller financing. They're either going to be seller financing or they're going to be owned by the LLC. Can we take a personal loan for the initial investment? You can do whatever you want for the initial investment. You could use your home equity for the initial investment. Just make sure the numbers pencil out. Because if you take out a home equity loan, you're going to have a loan payment. So let's just do the math and make sure that you're going to cash flow enough to make the loan payment before you start borrowing. Now, your college funding specialist can help you figure out where the money is going to come from. Okay. Alice, what is cash to close? Basically, cash to close is like closing costs. It's like the closing costs. It's kind of like when you buy a regular house, there's like closing costs. And then the initial escrow, that's basically the money that's going to cover the 6 months of expenses while we get it designed and set up as an Airbnb. Hopefully we get it done faster. And if we don't spend all that money, you can have the money back that we don't spend. Okay. But we just want to make sure there's enough money in there to get it all up and running. Is it possible to use a 1031 exchange for a 50-50 house? Yes, it is, Eric. We can do a 1031 exchange. I've talked to the CPAs about it, and there's ways to do it. A HELOC. Yes, correct, Roy. Yep. Marjorie, if we want to sell 5 years into the deal, do we still get our full initial investment back? Marjorie, it depends on how much you can sell your 50% for. So if you choose to sell your 50%, but we don't want to sell the house, but you just want to sell your ownership, then you can sell it for whatever you can get out of it. And we probably would have another client that would want to buy in to your 50%. So Marjorie, if you have like a family emergency and you need to sell your 50%, we could probably find a client that would want to buy your 50%. Or maybe we want to buy it. We might want to buy it from you. So when the house is sold, if the house appreciates, do we make any money? Yes. When the house is sold, if the house appreciated, you're going to get your money back first. Your initial investment, you get your initial investment back first, and then we split the equity 50-50. Or we split the difference 50-50. How about an equity loan on the rental? So the only time we're going to take a loan against the rental is for like major expenses, like if it needs a new roof or a air conditioner goes out or something. Okay. Roy says, can I start the 50-50 this year, but do the depreciation next year? Yes. Yes, Roy, you can choose to take the depreciation basically anytime you want, really. So yeah, you could get into one of these properties this year and take the tax benefits next year. How long is the typical max time frame to sell the property? Not quite sure what the question is there, Sirhat. What do you mean sell the property? I mean, we don't plan on selling the property. The plan is not to sell the property. Yeah, so we don't plan on selling it. But if it makes sense and we want to sell it and go invest in another one with you, then maybe we both agree to sell it. But if it's a cash flowing property, we might just let it keep generating cash flow every year forever. Who pays the mortgage? The rent. The rent pays the mortgage. If there's not enough money in the escrow account to pay the mortgage, then we'll cover it. If we buy the house, is there a way to get the cost segregation? Yes, that's the whole benefit. Yeah, that's the whole benefit is you get the cost segregation and tax benefits. Good questions. Good questions. Keep them coming. I mean, hopefully I know there were a lot of questions earlier. Hopefully I didn't miss any. If I missed some questions, you can ask them again. Because I know there's been a lot of questions and a lot of comments, but I may have missed some of them. Okay, so let me just look briefly. Okay, if there were any major questions that I missed, feel free to ask those. Okay, let's see here. The cost segregation study is paid for by you. You would pay the cost segregation study. And those are around $2,500. Okay, Alice says, I understand this sheet. I don't understand the example earlier about paying $3,000 a month. Okay, Alice, I apologize if I confused you on the $3,000 a month. Just reach out to us and let us walk through some specific numbers for you. If there is long vacancy, who pays the mortgage? Yeah, so that's what we would cover. We would cover the mortgage payment if there's long vacancy. Ivy, cost seg bonus depreciation can only be taken with short-term rentals. How about midterm rentals? No, in order for you to offset W-2 income, it needs to be a short-term rental. But if you're a real estate professional, you kind of play by different rules. But if you're a W-2 income earner, it has to be a short-term rental. The insurance is all, we help set up all the insurance and everything. Alice says, where's the $3,000 coming from? That was just an example. Sorry. The $3,000 was just an example of what it would cost to own real estate. Obviously, it's Yeah, that was yeah, bad yeah, bad example. Did you mean CapEx comes out of equity and then if it goes above that then it's 50/50. So yes, so John, on a major expense, like let's say that we have a major expense, like it needs a new roof or it needs a new air conditioner or something like that. We'll tap into the equity first if we can. And if not, we'll split it 50/50. We'll both go in on the expense 50/50. Does your internal team manage the property or do you use a third party? It's going to be a little bit of both. We are bringing a lot of it in-house for the whole benefits of economies of scale, and then we'll have some boots on the ground in some of the local areas. So we are building out an entire management company internally for maximum, to focus on maximum revenue. Okay. Good questions. Good questions. Any other questions? Any questions? I think I've answered most of them. Hmm, 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 hmm. Okay. Has the tax benefit to us through cost segregation and then by K2 tested? Sujan, I'm not quite sure what that question is. K2. You mean like a K1? Oh, K1. Oh, so no, you would just get a regular, you would do a regular cost segregation study and you would be able to just take all the depreciation. We're not going to split it. If we wanted to try to do it through some sort of agreement or some sort of a K1, we could, but we're just going to keep it super simple. You just get to take it all. You get to take all the tax benefits, so we don't have to worry about it. You get all the benefits. Mm-hmm. Christine says, how are you getting these houses? Are they already Airbnbs? Some of them are already Airbnbs. Some of them are like, I'll show you a couple of them that we have right now for those of you who are still on, if you want a little bonus hour here. Okay, it won't take a whole hour, don't worry. But here are some. This is one property you could be a 50/50 owner in. This is a nice cabin in the Smoky Mountains with an indoor pool. And it is currently furnished, but we would still put some more money into it to make it amazing. This is another one, also in the area as well, with another indoor pool, a theater room, and some other stuff in there. So this one's a little over 1.4 million. This one's over a little over 1.2 million. This one is also, oh, that one's the one. Okay, this one we actually just purchased. This one we actually just closed on this one in the Smoky Mountains. And so we're in the middle of changing the management. So the previous manager took down their listing. But this one was like an $800,000 house. So this one's a really cool one too. This one, this one we just sold to one of our clients. This one was in Kissimmee, Florida. We just sold this one to another one of our clients. We've got a whole list of them that are on the way that we're just posting. We're looking, we're doing all of the underwriting. So what we do is we go through and do a deep dive, and we do some deep dive on the underwriting before we post them. So we've got a lot of good potentials coming up. So stay tuned. But let us know what your budget is so we can keep an eye out for a property that would fit your budget. All right, what creates the distinction between us having to pay 50% versus just paying for cleaning? Oh, are you talking, Eric, about personal use? If you're talking about personal use, if you wanted to like rent the house for Christmas, then you could rent it for 50% off. But if it's not rented out next week and you just want to go use it next week, then you would just pay the cleaning. But you can't You can't book it out 3 months in advance during the peak season when we should be making money on it. Because if you're using it for personal use when we could be making money, then that hurts both of us, basically. And so you can rent it out as long as you want for as many times as you want at a 50% discount. But if it's not being used, you could use it for free, just pay the cleaning. If it's not being used within the next couple weeks. Tell me if that makes sense. I hope that was your question. Okay, cool. Alice says, will you guys also rent it to yourselves for 50% off? Maybe. Yeah, possibly. We might rent it for 50% off. You would still get the same amount of money, right? So we might, I mean, these are going to be houses that we would like to own as well. That's why we're offering them as a 50-50. But probably not. That's a lot of houses to go visit. Okay, good questions. We're pushing 90 minutes. Let's wrap it up in 5 more minutes. Again, reach out to your college funding specialist. Reach out to your college funding specialist. You can go to scholarshiphouse.com/5050 if you want to read up on it, or if you want to read the contract for all the details. If you're more of a detailed person, that's all at that link. And then meet with your college funding specialist, tell them you're interested, and we'll help you find a property. Let's see here. Jay says, if we rent it for 50% off the fee, don't we earn back 50% of that? So technically, no. So like if you pay for well, yeah, I mean, yes. So technically, yeah, technically there would still be some revenue coming in. Christine says, can we buy you out of your 50% ever? Sure, you can make us an offer if we want out. But it's not in the contract. It's not in the contract that you can, force us to get out, because we may want to keep it forever. But if you come to us and say, hey, we want to buy you out, make us an offer. Roy says, can we rent another house your company holds for 50% as well? Hey, here's what I'm trying to build. What I'm trying to build is scholarshipvacations.com. Scholarshipvacations.com would be a way for you to go and stay in each other's houses, okay? And we're all supporting each other. We could also trade. We could trade a week at our house for a week at this house. And that way we don't have to spend money and pay taxes. So there's no revenue collected or anything like that. So you could just say, hey, you could go into our community and you could say, hey, I've got a place on the beach. Does anyone want to trade me a cabin in the mountains for skiing on a week? I'll take a week in the mountains for a week on the beach. And we can do some trading back and forth as well. So there's some really fun stuff that we're going to do as a community. I want to actually build a boutique Airbnb called scholarshipvacations.com. And then that way we're kind of supporting each other, which I think will be kind of fun. And then we're also going to encourage other clients out there, the general public. We're going to encourage the general public to rent a scholarship house directly from our website. And we're going to basically say that when you rent a scholarship house, you are supporting their kids' education. So then we're going to get the public to start renting scholarship houses because that supports a child's education. So there's going to be a little philanthropic in there. And so, yes, this is going to be a fun community, a very fun community. We're going to have hundreds of houses that we all own that we'll be able to do a lot of direct bookings and things like that. It'll be pretty fun, actually. And no, you can't get my slides, but you can watch the recording. And then what else is after the mortgage, of course, cool. Otherwise, just to get better and better. All right. Let's see here. Ivy says, It just keeps getting better and better. You were brilliant. Sounds great, Roy says. All right. Ivy says, way better than timeshares. Yes, way better than timeshares. Sylvana says, great idea. Yamini, you are so creative. Oh, you guys are funny. Could we go to other Airbnbs for a discount? Yes, for sure. That's the whole benefit. We can do trades. We can trade weeks with each other. It'll be fun. How many properties do you manage now? So we just started our 50/50 partnership program this year. So we've been rolling it out in kind of like a beta testing form, and we're currently closing on about one house a week right now. So it is super popular. I hope you guys think that this is cool. Give me a thumbs up if you like the idea of the 50/50. Now, some of you might want to just own it yourself, and that's fine. If you want to own it yourself, you can own it yourself. But give me a thumbs up in the chat if you think that owning it with us would be nice, because then you don't have to do anything, right? It's hands off. You don't have to do anything. And that is our goal. Our goal is to make it really easy for you. Okay. Awesome. Looks like everybody is loving it. Good deal. Good deal. Okay. Lots of thumbs up and emojis. Okay. Cool. This was fun. It's another 90-minute long webinar. Sorry I confused you with the $3,000 a month earlier. My point is when you invest in real estate, whether it gives you positive cash flow or not, it's still investing in an asset that increases in value. It's that simple. If you get cash flow, even better. That's why we're guaranteeing you at least a 4% return. So it's like a win-win. You get a guarantee and you get upside appreciation. Hopefully you get where I was going with that. Will all of this be counted for the CSS Pro? No, this does not count against you on the financial aid, and I'll explain why in more detail one-on-one when you book a call with us. But basically, whatever money you put into this doesn't really show up. It doesn't really show up anywhere because all the money that we put towards designing and closing costs and all that kind of stuff, this is a great way to reposition some of your assets. Great way to reposition some of your assets from the financial aid forms. Okay, I'm going to put the recording to this in our school group. Okay, so this will be posted in our school group. Everyone should go into, if you are not in our school group, then please talk to your college funding specialist and get in our school group. That's where all the good stuff is. That's where we're going to be making all these announcements and everything. So if you go to school.com, SKOOL.com, it'll say Creative College Funding VIPs. That is you. Okay. And then we will be posting these webinars here. The private reserve strategy webinar is right here. If you have not watched the private reserve strategy, you should go watch the private reserve strategy webinar. That was the other one that we did. If you did not watch the tax training, please go watch the tax training. We had Revo taxpayers do the tax training. We've got some awesome stuff. And then under classroom, we've got members only webinars. Go under the classroom and get to members only webinars. So it'll be under members only webinars, and it'll also be under the community. So go check it out. Show your spouse if they weren't able to watch it with us. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for being on. Hopefully that was helpful. We'll be talking soon.